years, I didn't have any clinical research experience or research really, period. So I talked to Dr. Brooks, and she kind of got us started on a track where she had some connections. So we did some microbiome research that we're still waiting to publish. But with all this neurotology stuff that I'm doing, vestibular schwannomas, cochlear implants, I don't know anything about that. That is not a high yield topic for your preclinical years or your exams. Um, my first couple of weeks, all they had me do was read research. All I did was review all of the literature. I mean, I was reading, I think in my first week, I read like 120 something articles, imported them into Zotero, took notes, and I went from knowing nothing to all of a sudden like, hey, I can say some semi-intelligent things about this topic. So if you can find a topic that you're interested in but you may not know anything about, go look at the research. It's time consuming, but that's really the fastest way to get yourself up to speed. And I think if you don't, it can be really easy to say something that will make you look dumb because this is common knowledge and you're saying that it's not, or you don't speak the lingo per se. So yeah, just reading research, looking at literature reviews, things like that.
I think in the same vein as Jason, for me, when I reached out to my research here is extremely unstructured in the sense that I mean I spend most of my days I'm in surgery by about 7:30 in the morning, and I usually don't leave depending upon the day, and I usually don't leave the OR until the earliest, probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Um, and it's kind of that's just because they know that I'm interested in surgery, and they also like that I'm there and learning that stuff kind of along the way. But as kind of in the same vein as what Jason is saying, is immersing yourself into whatever you kind of are, whatever you think you might be interested in. And the interest doesn't have to be neurotology, it doesn't have to be neurosurgery, it can be I'm interested in pediatrics, or this huge broad field. Like it can really be anything you're interested in. And as you start to kind of familiarize yourself with what's out there, what can you do, um, what's being done, you'll start to say, okay, I'm interested in this little bit here. And then again, kind of as I think what both Jason and I have done is find a mentor. I think that's huge. Like it's really, really, really hard to figure out where to start because we kind of have the whole world in front of us, if you will, and that's difficult to figure out what road do you start to travel down when you have literally every single road in front of you. So I think, and I might be speaking for Jason a little bit here, but what we have both been a little bit successful in doing is finding a mentor who can say, all right, you're interested in this huge topic of ENT and neurosurgery. Let me help you kind of get down this path a little bit. And that can be a tough thing. I mean, you sometimes you have to email a lot of people, and you have to take a lot of no's before someone is going to say, hey, yeah, let's get this done. But just kind of seconding on what Jason is saying, immersing yourself in whatever it is, I think is the best way to do it, because that's when you're going to figure out, one, are you really interested in whatever you think you're interested in? And I say that because I said before, I started this, that I really wanted to do neurosurgery, and I love it. And thank God that I do, because I'm doing it all day, every single day, pretty much nonstop. So you kind of figure out, is this really what I want to do? And then you find a mentor to help kind of back you up along the way. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Dr. Afshari, you've had your reaction hand up the longest. Student doctor.
Yeah,
Oh, there
hey.
you are. You turned your camera on. Very good. Go for it.
Hi. So I am currently considering a research year, and the reason why is because I really want to go to a specific program for anesthesiology. And that's kind of unheard of to take a research year for that. However, I really want to become a strong applicant. So as that being said, I've contacted numerous residency programs starting from the West Coast to the East Coast, sent numerous emails, phone calls, and voicemails. However, I haven't been able to I haven't been able to talk with the right person to guide me in the right way. And I feel like that is such a struggle. And with you guys, you said to build your own connections and network yourself. However, I'm just here to listen and see if you guys have any advice of how to truly get a connection like that, because I've spent countless hours and time trying to communicate and network, but it's failed miserably with zero feedback. So if there's anything you guys could recommend in more trying more than that, please let me know.
Yeah, so I know exactly how you feel, because it took me months to kind of get going for where I'm at right now. Because I was told several times by the University of Arizona, we don't do this, we don't take research years, and you have to be very careful and make sure you're very professional, as we are trained to be, about how you handle it. Because one, you don't want to be annoying. That is the first way to get a door closed on you, is if you're annoying. But two, a little bit of healthy persistence really went a long way for me. I basically, whenever I would get told no, or we don't do this, or something like that, I would respond with essentially, hey, I appreciate your feedback. Is there anyone else that I can reach out to that might know how I could get this set up? Or, is there anyone else that I could talk to get a little bit more information? Again, very, very respectful, always grateful for their time, but kind of looking for the next person, if you will. And for me, I hit one person who, and this individual, she's fantastic. She's not an administrator. She's a part-time like assistant in the neurosurgery department. She just happened to say, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's get this set up. And then she opened up every single door to all the program directors, to other neurosurgeons. And basically, I think what I'm trying to get at is healthy and respectful persistence and resilience is so important, because they are getting so many emails from medical students across the entire country that want to do exactly what we're doing. And it's not to say that that one person is better than the other, but when you get 300 emails, you kind of just get to a point where it's like, oh well, I don't really know where to go, from their end. I don't really know what to do with this information from here. So just healthy persistence. And I didn't get a response from, I'd probably say 75% of the neurosurgeons that I emailed, but it just takes one person to come back and say, actually, yeah, I do have this thing that I would love I'd love some help with. And always remember too, again, we're trained in all these things, but there is nothing that is kind of beneath you, if you will. If they want you to start out with, hey, give me a summary on this one paper, you go give them the best summary that you can possibly give on that paper, and show them that you're capable of doing that thing, and then the responsibilities will increase. And I'll use kind of anecdotal, kind of, I guess, evidence, if you will, here. It started out for me where I was only giving, summaries and trying to write papers. And now I'm assisting in almost every surgery that I can get my hands on. And it's just because every time you get a task and you show that you can do that task, now you have a little bit more responsibility. And then there's a little bit more on top of that. And then you kind of build those networks and those relationships that way. I'm not sure if that helps, but keep at it, because you're going to find that eventually one person will kind of throw you the bait a little bit. They'll throw you the hook a little bit. And then that's when you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'll just echo some of that. It is really about finding the right person. I'm pretty lucky in ENT. All of these doctors are just happy, pretty chill, always very willing to give back. So they're very responsive, very helpful. But some of the things that I did, so like the ENT Academy has a mentorship program. So you could look for anesthesia and see if the American College of Anesthesia, or whatever it's called, has a mentorship program for students. They'll connect you with a practicing physician who may know people. One of the other things I did, I went to that conference and they had a luncheon, like a lunch hour session that was about mentoring and coaching. And I'm like, okay, this is for doctors who want to learn how to be mentors and coaches. I'm going to sign up as a student and go meet all of these doctors that want to be mentors and coaches. And one of them I connected with, she's the dean of the Ohio State Medical School. The other's a past president of the academy. Both of them were like, oh, you're super interested. Look at you, thinking outside the box. Let me start connecting you with people. And so the cold calling is low yield and it'll work. But if you can get somebody with a name that's relatively known on your behalf to contact people, whether it's your mentor or somebody you meet at a conference, that will open a lot more doors. So consider meeting these people in person. And beyond that, if you're really having a hard time meeting people and connecting with people, look for established research programs. It may not be at that one program you really want to go to, but at the end of the day, the odds of you matching at that one specific program is very, very low, just generally speaking. So I wouldn't set your sights on one program. Look for any and all opportunities to do research. Take the year, and maybe one of the attendings you work for at that program has connections with the program you want to go to. You'll get a great letter from somebody they know, and you may get in there. But I would keep it broad and open and look for structured opportunities. Just Google the program, see if they have, Google anesthesia at whatever university research fellowship. And a lot of times they'll have a separate program coordinator you can talk to, and then they can start connecting you. And if you go there, great, you do the research, great, you get it all on your CV, you meet people, you get really good letters, and you're better off doing that than not doing anything.
I actually want to jump
hopefully
on
it
what
helps.
Jason said. Jason just put a good thought in my head. One of the abstracts that I just submitted actually was with a neurosurgeon I have not ever even met before. It was just, he was a colleague of one of the guys that I'm working with right now, and they had talked that they needed some help, and the guy that I'm working with had said, hey, I have a guy who's got a little bit of free time. If you want him to help out, great. Next thing you know, now we're submitting an abstract together. So you really don't know who all of these people know. I mean, these physicians get so intertwined with each other, and they know a person who knows a person who can get you exactly what you're looking for. So don't, as Jason said, don't narrow your scope so much to where it's just one specific program. Keep in mind that a lot of these physicians have extremely large networks that on the surface you would have no idea about.
Thank you. So I'm sensing two themes here. You both looked for and found a structured environment within which to do research, gain excellent mentoring in that, and through that mentoring, opportunities to expand your experiences in research. But you also have been extremely proactive in looking for opportunities to add clinical experiences or in some fashion to the structured research year that you're doing. Is that fair to say? Okay.
I think so. And I think one of the other things, as far as like let's kind of call it how it is. We're looking to get a residency spot, and from Jason and ENT, for me in neurosurgery, doesn't necessarily have to be at the University of Arizona, but not only kind of being proactive, but what is your end goal? Like, what are you really trying to get out of everything? Because for me, the surgeons down here, they've already said right up front, it's not about having a million different abstracts. They want to see that you get along well with everybody. How do you work when you're up late? How do you work with each other? Are you still a good teammate? Are you still going to support me when I need it? How are you to the nursing staff? How are you to the other ancillary staff? How are you to families? To be honest with you, I think some of the best connections I've personally made so far are not even with the physicians, it's the residents. I'm texting residents all the time, and they're giving me advice about what they would do or how they would change things. And I just think making sure you know what your end goal is with all of this stuff is very, very important.
Thank you. So that gets at one theme of questions that is in the chat about clinical experiences that you've been able to do along with your structured research. We'll move on to student Dr. Michael Johnson, who's had his reactive hand up for quite a while. SD Johnson, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for fielding our question. So I have a question, and Kayla has a question here as well. We're both second years.
If you don't mind.
So question number one, have there been any students that do more of a self-directed fellowship in research, or does it have to be through a program?
I don't know personally of like self-directed stuff. My initial inclination would be kind of hesitant towards that, and the reason being is, again, the research and all that is great, but you really, really need to meet people who can help you get to where you want to go. And on top of that, if you're, like the abstract that I just submitted an abstract a couple weeks ago. To be honest with you, if that didn't have, Michigan State University and the University of Arizona, would that go anywhere? I mean, maybe, it might. I don't know. I can't say no for certain. But to have, two big name neurosurgeons and two big universities tied into that, and then your name thrown on top of it, that's kind of where the money is when, as far as getting stuff submitted. I'm not trying to shoot down a self-directed year at all. All I'm saying is that literally just saying the name of some of the surgeons I'm working with have opened doors for me. Like, no,
Sure.
not even proof that I'm working with them. Just saying their name opened the doors. So initially up front, I would personally probably be a little bit hesitant to do a self-directed year.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
I would agree. It sounds a little bit backwards, but I'm not necessarily doing the research year for the research. It's for the network, it's for the connections, and it's for the letters of recommendation that I'm going to get from big names that are well known and run programs. The other difficulty with self-directed research is you just don't have the resources. You don't have access to patients. You don't have the financial support, the funding. You don't have, the HIPAA related clearances and all that stuff. So the quality of research that you're going to do in a self-directed year is not, in my opinion, not worth the time off of school. You're better off going to a structured or semi-structured program that has the resources, that has the surgeries happening, or has has a clinic you can go into, has a patient population you can access. A bunch of the projects we're doing right now is through this new database called Trinetics. The university pays for it. No way I could afford it on my own. We're also working with Intermountain. They're sending us a ton of patient data that there's no other way I could access. We're getting data pulled from the University of Utah on patients. So like for a lot of this retrospective stuff, that's data you would never, ever be able to get your hands on by yourself. So just the quality of research you'd be able to do on your own would not be worth the time, in my opinion.
Very good. Thank you.
Kind of on top of that as well, like essentially what you would be writing, maybe this is a little bit too presumptive, but you would essentially be writing reviews basically the entire time in that year off. You'd just be writing review articles about general subjects. And again, echoing what Jason said, right now, I'm in surgery with, a $5,000 headset, and, we're looking at metrics from using those headsets with patients, and we have 10 of those headsets. And it's like, one, as Jason said, you're not doing surgery there, but two, just the upfront cost of doing this stuff it's not possible unless you have someone in your pocket to help you out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I ask my question, Dr. Miller?
Go ahead.
Sorry, we have one hand on Zoom. My question is actually the same as a couple of people have asked in the chat, but you've mentioned between third and fourth year doing this rotation. Is it possible to do a research rotation and have it be meaningful if you were to do it between second and third year or other times?
So I don't know the logistics school-wise between second and third year. I think, in my opinion, having the clinical experience is worthwhile. Also having a step 2 score was helpful. But the advice I was given was do it between third and fourth year. That looks intentional. It doesn't look like, oh, I went through the match, didn't match, going to take a gap year now and do research. It looks like a plan B. So third and fourth year was the advice I got, just because it looks like, okay, I am planning, I'm preparing, this is all intentional. I'm doing everything I can to be a competitive applicant now. I'm not just going to see if I don't match and then try it. I don't, the feasibility between second and third year, that would be a question for the school. I wouldn't do it between second and third year. That's just my opinion.
I would echo what Jason said. And my reason, to be honest, I didn't even think about the logistics. My reason behind it is that you're going to get around, these physicians and these residents, and they will ask you clinical questions. Like, it's not your job to be a clinical student there, but they're going to ask you clinical questions, and you're not expected to get them right, but you are expected to be in the ballpark a little bit, and at least have a thought process behind why you're saying what you're saying. And there's two pieces of advice that residents gave me that I try to live by. The first one is never be in the way. ever. If you think you're in the way, like remove yourself from the situation, because that's a big negative for you. And two is, again, you don't have to be right, but if you're saying an answer to a question that is so far out of left field that it's so obvious that you should have just said I don't know, that's a problem. Like, that's not a good thing. And as you'll see, when you go into your third year, you could have answered every single question on step one and complex one right, every single one of them. But you're going to step in and you're going to see your first patient in your clinicals, and you're going to be like, okay, this is different. This is a different form of thinking. This is a different way of kind of learning and adapting. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's why it's designed like this. But you need that year to train your brain to say, all right, these people are not a question, these people are patients, and they come with, you know, a million different problems and a million different comorbidities that you have to think about all those things. So I would second Jason with with going between your third and fourth year as well. There was a DO neurosurgery resident at the University of Colorado where I got this idea, where he did it between his third and fourth year. And he had said the same thing Jason said, is if you do it between your third and fourth year, it's very intentional, it's very structured, versus if you wait until your fourth year, even if it was your whole plan all along, the assumption is that, oh, they didn't match, and now they're looking for a backup in a way to make this look better than what it is. And you know, maybe that wasn't your plan, but that's just what it looks like. And you have to keep that in mind pretty much when you're going throughout all this stuff. Is every action you're taking needs to be intentional. It's not like it's right or die, it's not like life or death, but it needs to be intentional with what you're doing, because the further you go along, the higher the stakes get.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Zabata, you've had your hand up for a while, sir.
Yes, I love what you guys are doing. I just wanted to provide a little bit of insight. I get approached a lot. I do research. I'm not a physician, but I get approached a lot by students from other schools at other comps that want to do research with me. And the reason is I get to do stuff and it's visible. So every time I get approached, people know what I did. They tell me, I read your paper. I did this because I saw that you did that. So all those things are things you need to mention when you look for a mentor. If you just throw emails, nobody wants to read emails. So it has to be something that appeals to people. And for that, you need to do a little bit of homework, see if there is a program, what type of abstract they send. Do they work with surgery a lot? Do they work a lot in the, outpatient? And if they do one of those things, try to highlight the things that will be useful for the people that are going to be looking for it. Because nobody just wants to pick up anybody. And, if I want to pick you up, it has to be for a reason. And, it always sounds better to find somebody who really can provide something rather than somebody who's trying to remediate because they made something wrong. So those are the things you just got to check for. Make sure you do your homework. This is about people.
I'm really glad you said that, and I wish I'd remembered that. The student doctor who said he was having trouble with getting contacts and anesthesia. Now that you say that, it's reminding me. I actually would read the bios of everybody that you're emailing, and make sure that you're not sending make sure the name you're sending to is actually the person you're sending an email to, and you're not just copying and pasting everything. I put that I had read, I didn't read all of it, and you don't need to be an expert in their field, but go read a few of the abstracts they've published and say, I'm interested in XYZ and I like how you did XYZ, things like that. Again, you hit the nail on the head there. Make sure you're getting a little bit personal with them. I mean, it's kind of tough because you're just reading about what they write, but that goes a long way, just to show that you put in just that little bit of extra effort.
And one more thing, if you have any privilege, use it. So if your neighbor is a surgeon, if your father's buddy is an anesthesiologist, make sure they hook you up with the people that know. Because always buddies come first. And if you're one of the buddies, you'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can echo that. This position I got at the U, I actually grew up in the surgeon's neighborhood. So, He knew who I was. He knew who my parents were. He's like, yeah, I'll take you. I didn't even have to apply. So what he's saying is definitely true. Use your personal connections to, look elsewhere too, but definitely use the connections. The other thing I would say, kind of off what Avery was saying, don't look dumb is a really big thing. I was talking to the admissions committee 2 weeks ago, and they were saying that they have so little time on each application and interview that if you even pronounce one of the common ENT terms wrong in your interview, it's a huge red flag. So if you say something that in your email that looks absolutely dumb and is not consistent with the field, that is going to be a red flag for them, only because they don't have the time to give you the benefit of the doubt, dig deeper, or clarify. They get so many emails, so many questions, they just don't have time. So if you have a typo in your email, if you say something wrong, just know that will hurt you. So be very, very careful.
Very good advice. SD Lang, you have something written and I see your hand up. Are you going to ask your question?
Yeah, that was the plan, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking on what we've been talking about. So I went through and I spent the last year kind of contacting people and mainly just looking for research in general in orthopedics. And I got in contact with someone, and he kind of offered doing a research year with him. And I just was wondering what the process is from there forward, and like what your experience was with RVU. And I guess, yeah, the timing. So it sounds like between third and fourth year is best. And then I just wondering like how that looks. Like some people have said you have to take like a leave of absence. And I feel like there's just things I was hearing that didn't quite sound right. So I just wanted to hear some more from you guys.
Yeah, so there isn't really a super streamlined process with the school. I had to email a whole bunch of different people and kind of talk to every single one and get approval. You do have to take a leave of absence. So neither of us are currently students. We do not qualify for student loans. We do go into loan repayment. Those are all things to consider.
Keep in mind health insurance too. And I just say that because I just had surgery a couple days and that snuck up on me. So like all those things you have to keep in mind.
Yeah. So as for so yes, leave of absence, not a student. You don't technically get any of those benefits from the school. I don't think they shut down my email or anything, but I talked to Dr. Brooks, both Dr. Amanda and Dr. Ben Brooks, ran it by them. I talked to Dr. Miller. I talked to Dr. Farrell. I talked to the registrar, and then I talked to Dr. I don't remember his name. I should know his name. Anyway, I think it was the Dean of Student Affairs, David McCoy. I think that was his name, Dr. McCoy. And I basically had to individually get all of them to approve it. And then I kind of got all of them on one email thread saying, okay, everybody has approved this. What is the next step? And then you have to fill out, I think it was a form on the INET saying you're taking a leave of absence. You have to explain why you're doing it. They change your student status to like not actively enrolled. And you have to do it by a certain time. So like with me, there were some tricky deadlines because step 2, you have to be enrolled as a student to take step 2. So I had to take step 2 prior to the starting date of 4th year and before the last day of 3rd year. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been eligible to take the exam. So there are a lot of little things like that you have to consider. But yeah, I would just start by contacting the Dr. Brookses, both of them, and run the research by them and see if they think it's worthwhile and of benefit. Oh, I also met with Dr. Small to talk about would this even benefit me applying to residency. So it took me about 3 months start to finish to kind of contact everybody, get everybody on board, and then get everything finalized.
I'd echo that because the mistake I made is I won't be able to take step 2 until I finish my research year. And so basically keeping in mind all this stuff that we're doing with the research, because I didn't get my dates right, I'm keeping up with step 2 study right now, which on the surface is like, oh, it's not, not that big of a deal. You have a year to study or whatever. But keep in mind, you're not seeing patients every day. That is not your job. Your job is to do research, and all of step 2 study is on your own. So keep in mind that you want to make sure, like as Jason is saying, you have all your dates lined up and you're doing everything you can. So basically the moral of the story is be early. Like if you want to do it, start the process early. I started relatively late. Things snuck up on me, and this, it's no big deal. It's just kind of how it works. And that's why we're having this conversation with you now. But start early and make sure that, again, it's goal oriented. If, and I'm going to be a little bit blunt here, but if you're doing it, and I'll just use me as an example, because you think you want to be a neurosurgeon, and you're like, oh, I'll just do this, and then that'll make me a shoo-in for neurosurgery. That will not happen. I promise that will not happen. Like it will not be rewarding to you. Like as getting up every day and doing what you're doing, it won't be rewarding to you. You're going to feel like it's a job, and it's going to be tough because all of this stuff will mount up on itself. And then on top of everything, I think Jason, he's done a really good job. He said 13 abstracts earlier. I've submitted some abstracts and some papers. If you go throughout the whole research year and you don't submit anything, that does not look good for you. That really, really puts you in a bad spot. So if you think it's something you want to do, that's great. Pursue it. I'm not saying don't pursue it. But what I am saying is don't do it half-hearted, because if you go throughout the whole thing and you essentially, even if you make connections, but you don't publish anything, or nothing comes out of it, that really looks bad. That's really going to look bad for you moving forward, and it's going to look like a year wasted on your application.
That's
So-
outstanding advice.
I just had one more question kind of related to that. So the other thing is, so weighing, kind of like you said, Jason, I think you said you talked to Dr. Small, whether you would really be beneficial to you or not for like your end goal. For someone who already feels pretty confident in their ability to do research while in school, like if we're already kind of on that process, aside from, it sounded like the connections are more so what you guys are kind of working on during your research year. So I guess, yeah, where's like the dividing line between just being able to like pump out a lot of publications, like, and the connections versus like if I'm able to get some done.
Really, I think I see your point
Yeah.
here.
Like
To
while
me-
I'm in school.
Yeah, to me, they go hand in hand, and it's not necessarily, again, it's not necessarily about the publication, but it's about that person that you're doing the publication with. And I'll just use me as an example to kind of show you at least what we're talking about. I started out with one neurosurgeon. He's the only one that I was working with. And now, but there's 6 or 7 neurosurgeons at the University of Arizona now, because I've shown that I can do a relatively decent job with him, I'm working on projects with all of them now. And then as a result of that, I'm working on a project with, a neurosurgeon at Michigan State that they know. So that's where the networking comes in is, okay, it's great you published this paper, and that's good. That's what you're here for. But now you start to kind of exponentially grow your opportunities because you did a good job, and now this person who knows that person who can help you get kind of more intertwined, if you will. So the research it needs to be solid, because that's what's going to kind of start you out, if you will. Because if you just kind of have some, oh, it's kind of good, kind of bad, whatever, we're just kind of doing it, it's not really going to be fulfilling for really anybody, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not going to drive you. It's not going to drive the surgeons that you're working with. And you'll find, I'm not sure if this is the case with Jason, but if it's not interesting to these surgeons, it's really hard to get them to do stuff kind of for you and with you. Like their time is just so valuable. And so if it's not rewarding to them or interesting to them, it can be really challenging for them to kind of stick their neck out for you a little bit. So I would say that it's good that you're doing research in school and stuff like that, but getting to a position where you can have other surgeons back you with that research, that's when the networking will really start to take off for you.
Yeah, I
Thank
would I would echo a lot of that. The only thing I would add is that if you're trying to decide whether or not a research year is worth it, you need to sit down either with Dr. Small or by yourself and objectively look at, these are the average numbers. The average applicant to ortho or whatever you're going into, they have 11 publications. They rank in the top 10% of their class. They are XYZ. Step 2 scores this. Step 1's, well, not step 1 anymore, but if you can sit down and you say, I fit the top half of all applicants and all of these objective measurements of scores, grades, ranking, whatever. I have, 11 publications when the average is 13. If you can sit down and say, I'm competitive on paper without doing this research year, the next question is, do I know the people that I need to know? And can I get the letters of recommendation that will push my application into that next level? And if the answer is I don't have the network, then you should be focusing on building a network, meeting people, going to conferences, showing interest. Well, even if you're not trying to work with them, you need to know these people. You need to get your name out there. And if you're struggling getting the correct number of papers, you can't hit the average, they're low quality, and you don't have a network or good letters, I would strongly consider doing research for a competitive specialty. We are at a little bit of a disadvantage as a DO program, with no academic hospital, with no, orthopedic faculty, ENT faculty. So getting a letter from a program director that has seen you for longer than your 2 or 4 week sub-I is huge. So like I was saying earlier, I'm balancing I'm getting my papers in, I'm going to hit the average numbers for ENT applicants, and I'm going to get minimum 3 letters of recommendation from program faculty whose names are known throughout the country. And so that was one of the big pushes for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're getting a little bit short on time.
Okay.
I want to point out that there was a lot of information that has been placed in the chat by faculty and your peers. So you might want to copy that in before this meeting closes. Dr. Small, you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys what your opinion is, because I think there are subsets of people who are thinking about a research year. And some people already have a strong interest, have a strong application already, and are thinking about this to, buff it up even a little more. But I suspect on the opposite end, there are people for whom this is their kind of last Hail Mary pass to try to get their dream specialty, even though, quite frankly, they probably are not competitive whether they do this or not because of test scores or that sort of thing. Do you think this is a reasonable Hail Mary, or do you think they should be talking with one of the advisors and figuring out maybe the forces of the universe are leading them in a different direction?
I think Dr. Small, that's a really good question. Where I am ranked in the bottom half of my class. My step 2 score was not incredible, but it is within range of students that are accepted. So I am on the lower end of ENT applicants, and I did research because with everything else I had, this would push me into a competitive range. So it's not out of reach. I've already talked to the admissions committee here at the U. They are confident that my grades, my ranking, and my scores would not be a hindrance to getting accepted somewhere. So I think you need to have that objective conversation with like you, Dr. Small, or somebody who with some experience. So I think Hail Mary might be the wrong term. If you're the bottom of your class and you barely pass step 2, I think you need to reconsider. But if you are within range, you look at the statistics from the last match and your numbers are at least within the range of what was accepted, then I think this would be beneficial.
I think that's such an amazing question. And I had one of the residents actually tell me, Dr. Small, Dr. Miller, like you guys kind of know how these residents get sometimes. One of the residents told me, he said, it's great that you're doing this research here, but if you I'll say drop the ball, that wasn't the word he used, but he's like, if you drop the ball on step 2, like none of this is going to matter. So you have to be very, very smart again about what everybody's saying, where you're at here. Like if you are in the I don't, whatever, 20th percentile for step 2, maybe ENT and neurosurgery, like it's just not going to be like that. That's just not how it's going to work. But on top of that, if you're in kind of the mix, as Jason is saying, this could very easily be the one thing that pushes you over. Because I've had, I don't want to speak too kind of verbosely, but I've already had residents, I've had the staff, I've had like the attending physicians, I've had nurses saying, I think you'd be a great fit here. Everything's looking great. You'd be a great fit here. We like you. You work hard. And basically, those are obviously all really good things to hear when you're trying to apply for a very competitive spot. So I think you have to be realistic with yourself. But I would also say that no matter how good of an applicant you are, and again, I'll use me for as an example. I'm in the top quarter of our class, or I think top quarter of our class. I haven't taken step 2 yet, but my grades are, all my clerkship grades were relatively well. And I still had a conversation with Dr. Small about this before I did this research year. And it was one of the best conversations I've ever had. Not necessarily for, is this something that I want to do, but to help me get a little bit more goal oriented about why I'm doing what I'm doing and getting put on the right path. I mean, I think that our advising faculty are very underutilized, and having that conversation was something that was extremely beneficial for me.
Thank you. Dr. Gubler, you're going to have the last question, sir.
Well, mine wasn't so much a question, but as I'm listening, I just wanted to throw it to the wind, caution. Not one shoe is going to fit everybody. I am confident there are people on this Zoom that it would not be in their interest to do a research here. On the others, there's probably some that could be career changing, but you need to know why you're doing the research. And I am of the opinion it doesn't matter what the topic is. Research has to become part of your fabric. If you're only doing it to get an X in the box that I presented at a meeting, committees will look at that and they'll see right through you. The purpose of research is for the curious mind, and that's the type of applicant places are looking for. So make sure you know why you're doing it and open up, the door to multiple different mentors from different specialties. There are mentors out there that I know, the kind of traditional triple threat they're known by everybody who's anybody. And if you work in their lab and they like the work you do, they'll write you a letter and they will pick up the phone because they know somebody in every program you're applying to. And the people they talk to won't tell them no. It's that simple. So each step is critical in how you pick it, and be willing to accept that, maybe this isn't the solution for my lifelong goal. On the other hand, look at a career of doing research and how you're going to build that as part of your portfolio. And so anyway, I've found this very, very interesting, and in the bottom line, and how each individual program will utilize your research year may be very, very different across the spectrum.
I do want to second a few of those things, because I can't hammer home how important it is to know why you're doing this. If you're doing this to check a box, as Dr. Gubler is saying, it will not be fruitful for you. I promise you it won't. It is. I'm not trying to shoot it down, because again, for me, it's been very, very beneficial. But you're looking at taking a year off of school. You're talking about the financial implications of that. If you have a family, what goes with kind of taking off that year of school and not having any financial support as a result of that. For me, it's very hard work. You're kind of thrown into the deep end, if you will. And you're forced to learn a lot on the spot. Now, all of those things are things that I wanted and things that I invite as hopefully a future neurosurgeon. I invite all of those things. But if you're not ready for that and you're going in blindsided, it will be a very, very tough year for you. It'll be really tough.
If there was one word that I could say that I've heard the most and makes the most sense to me this hour, it's how intentional you both have been in seeking a good situation that would allow you experiences, but also allow you to spread your wings and gain experiences even outside of that structured research program. And not only have you been intentional, but you've been extraordinarily proactive, and you have been persistent without being pests. Those are skills that will do you extremely well as residents. And that's what program directors look for. In displaying the intentionality that you displayed, you showed how professional you were. You showed your ability to self-reflect and then utilize that reflection to further your goals. And you did it constantly. And you did it within a matrix that was wide open without a whole lot of structure to help you, both within our institution and without in the programs that you ended up in. You forged your path. It's that kind of intentionality that makes great residents, is what people are looking for. Thank you. SD Steels and SD Rose, contact information is in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to Dr. Amanda Brooks, Dr. Ben Brooks, myself, Dr. Small, Dr. Gubler, everyone that's been on this panel, Dr. Zabata, everyone that has contributed to this panel discussion today. We're all here to help you. We're all here to answer your questions. And what Dr. Gubler said is really so true. This is really individualized, which means you have to have a lot of conversations with a lot of people. And that's exactly what Avery and Jason did. They had a lot of conversations with a lot of people before they decided to pull the trigger and do this. So thank you both for being so honest and being willing to be here and talk to the students about it. Thank you all for your participation and your attendance today, and have a very pleasant day.
Thanks for getting us